Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about FOMO, the fear of missing out. I think by now, most of us, if not all of us, are quite familiar with the concept of FOMO, and certainly we've experienced FOMO from time to time. It's that highly anxious feeling that we are missing out on something really cool and exciting, whether it be an experience or a material item. And it really does affect us, doesn't it? So I really wanted to take this time to dissect what really is FOMO. We're going to talk about the history of FOMO, how it was discovered. We're going to talk about what it makes us feel. And we're also going to talk about what happens in our brains when we're experiencing FOMO. It's actually really fascinating. We'll also look at whether or not certain personality traits make us more vulnerable to FOMO. And we'll, of course, look at the influence of social media. We can't cover FOMO without covering social media and other factors that may also influence us. And then finally, last but not least, we're going to talk about how to overcome FOMO by taking a few simple steps. So let's get started. Okay, let's start with a quick history lesson. Before there was FOMO, there was FOBO, and that is the fear of a better option. Essentially, FOBO and FOMO are about the same thing. They both live off of this notion that there's a better alternative out there, and essentially it robs us of the ability to really enjoy the present and to really appreciate what we have in front of us. These two gentlemen here were key in shaping the concept of FOMO as we know it today. The guy on the left, Dan Herman, was the first to really study this idea before it was even known as FOMO back in 1996. And oh, by the way, he happens to be a marketing strategist. And today, he has a very successful consulting firm where he continues to advise brands and companies on how to get us to spend more money. So let's keep that in the back of our minds as we watch this video. Then we've got Patrick McGinnis on the right. He is essentially the one who coined the term FOMO in his writings starting about a decade ago. FOMO is powerful. As this funny little meme says, nothing is more powerful than just a dash of FOMO. And to a certain extent, that can be true. FOMO apparently is associated with feelings such as loneliness, boredom, stress, fatigue, also contributes to lower productivity, lower happiness, and overall lower fulfillment. I mean, look at this sweet little old lady. We can see this lady in us, can't we, at times, where we notice that something really cool and exciting is happening, or someone just purchased something really awesome, and we think that we're missing out because we don't have it going on in our lives. And look at her face. Does she look happy? No, she looks worried. She looks anxious. She looks upset, maybe even sad, maybe even disappointed. These are the feelings that FOMO stirs up in us. Research indicates that FOMO is generated in the part of our brains called the amygdala. Interestingly, the amygdala is also the part of the brain that tells us whether or not something is a threat to survival. Threat to survival can look like Tom Hanks in the movie Castaway, where he's stranded on an island all by himself and he's literally fighting to survive another day. Or in our ancestors' time, when it was hunters and gatherers, the hunters had to go out and find food and bring them back, right? Otherwise, they couldn't feed their family. So it's driven by this scarcity mindset of if I don't do or if I don't get, I will be at threat, that I will not survive. However, now we look at modern times. And this is what threat to survival apparently has turned into. It is literally this threat, this feeling that we're not going to be able to get the best deals, the best experiences. Look at Black Friday, the frenzy, the panic, the hysteria, people stomping all over each other, people waiting in line for hours just to get a better deal on a TV or some electronic device. Or what about this? In the last couple of years, we've seen this crazy behavior. It's all really irrational and ridiculous because, like, we can't survive without toilet tissue? Really? No! Of course we can survive without toilet tissue. I'm not going to get into it, but I mean, somebody is buying this much toilet paper because they're freaked out that they're going to run out. And we're not just talking about toilet paper and essentials and staples that we need for day-to-day life. We're also talking about luxury goods, non-essentials. If you're on my channel and you're a regular here, then I'm going to assume you have a sweet spot for luxury items like I do. How many of us have panic bought? Okay? When we hear that there's a price increase coming, raise your hand or comment down below if you went out and panic bought. You just grabbed whatever you thought would be a good buy, or you grabbed something that you thought you might want, but you weren't 100% sure yet, but you just had to pull the trigger because, hey, there's a price increase coming in 2 days, better get ahead of it. This is all driven by FOMO. This would be a good time to revisit my experience going to the Hermes sale here in New York City a few months back, my first and only time that I've been to an Hermes sale, and it will be my last because I vow never to return. Yes, you can see here I waited for a whole 8 hours outside on a very long line with a friend. It was a very interesting experience, but incredibly exhausting and really unproductive. I waited in line, I went in, and I realized very quickly that there was nothing there that I was actually interested in buying. There was nothing there that was worth taking home. So after 8 hours, I didn't buy anything. Now, of course, there was the FOMO that kicked in, where a lot of my friends or the people around me were saying, you have to buy something. You're going to regret it if you go home empty-handed, especially after waiting so long. And of course, there were moments where I thought, yeah, I should probably find something. But thank goodness, some of my common sense kicked in, and I came back to the reality that to buy something that I don't even want would be even worse than waiting 8 hours. It would be I waited 8 hours to take home things that I don't even want, that I spent my hard-earned money on. So it's like triple whammy versus, okay, I had an interesting experience with a friend for 8 hours and then I went home, period. So that was a case where FOMO was pulled back and then I was able to be a bit more disciplined. So we're going to talk about this in a little bit. How do we overcome FOMO? What are some of the tactics that we can rely on to pull us back when we're feeling that we are about to miss out and we're about to panic? How can we stay a bit more calm and rational in these situations? But before we can understand how to overcome FOMO, we really need to understand ourselves a bit better. Researchers did these studies to see if there were certain personality traits that linked with FOMO. So they looked at traits such as openness, extroversion, conscientiousness, neuroticism, and others. And interestingly, there was no direct link with those traits and FOMO. However, researchers did find evidence that those who felt insecure in their lives experienced more FOMO. Studies have found that those who are insecure and those who lack confidence in making decisions for their own lives will be much more vulnerable to feelings of FOMO and the worry of missing out on something better. And especially for young people today, social media is going to play a huge role in how confident or secure one feels, whether it be image, lifestyle, choices. There's such a comparison happening on the World Wide Web. What's interesting, though, is that researchers found that whether you hear about something really cool and exciting directly from a friend or you happen to see it on social media, it really makes no difference. They can both equally trigger FOMO. So that means that getting off of social media entirely won't necessarily remove FOMO from your life. However, there is a catch. Because social media is nonstop 24 hours and all-consuming, the greater exposure you have to social media, the more distractions you have, and the more situations where you are putting yourself at risk of comparison will increase your likeliness of experiencing FOMO. Okay. What's also really interesting is that there have been many studies showing that FOMO is higher later in the day or near the end of a week because the increased exposure throughout the day or through the week starts to wear us down. If we spend too much time on social media and we allow ourselves to get consumed, eventually the line between reality and the internet starts to get blurred. And researchers have studied this phenomenon where people will be at risk of tuning out of the real world, real connections, real friendships, real opportunities, and instead so tuned into this fake world of the internet where everything is artificially curated and orchestrated and made to make us feel less than. It's not just social media that amplifies FOMO. We have to take a good hard look at our real lives. What are we doing to curate our lives in a way that we're filling it with joyful, meaningful experiences that fulfill us? Because research tells us that when we spend a lot of time really stressed and fatigued and burnout, perhaps fulfilling work obligations or school obligations or family obligations, then the risk of FOMO goes up exponentially. If you're in a dead-end job or a miserable situation or an unhealthy relationship, then take a good look at it and edit it. Edit it the way you would a photo or a video for social media. We're curating our lives. We're auditing how we spend our time and our energy. And this right here says, don't just survive life, live it, right? Otherwise, we will be at great risk for FOMO because we tell ourselves, we were so miserable all week, working so hard, doing all these things that we didn't want to do. And now it's time to treat myself and go and splurge and buy things we genuinely don't even want, or just go to this major event even though we're tired. And really what would fill us is if we were to stay home, curl up in bed and get some rest. Have you ever noticed how young children can be so joyful and lighthearted and playful about just the simplest of things? Flowers, rain, sunshine, just constant giggles. I really do admire and envy that in my children. And I'm sure I was like that once when I was a kid, but I guess life tends to kind of wear on us, and then we become overly serious, and there's responsibilities on our shoulders, and things just change, don't they? But can we get back in touch with our childlike hearts? You know, finding the joy and the laughter and the lightness. Yes, we can. And actually, research tells us that as we get older with age, FOMO reduces. And maybe it's because we feel more secure, we feel more grounded in ourselves. We don't feel like we need to, show off or please anyone. We don't need to meet anyone else's standards, and we become much more confident in our own decisions. But that's good news, right? As we age, it's going to be easier to fight off FOMO. So we've just spent all this time talking about FOMO, the fear of missing out. But have you ever heard of JOMO? JOMO is an actual term, and it stands for joy of missing out. Psychologists refer to JOMO as an emotionally intelligent response to overstimulation. Isn't that fascinating? Overstimulation. At the end of the day, that's what it is. It's an overstimulation of too many choices, too many options, too many alternatives, and it prevents us from really enjoying and appreciating what we have right in front of us. So how can we enjoy more of what we have instead of yearning for more and fearing that we're missing out? There are 3 steps. The first one is very simple. You live in the moment. You embrace each experience. You look for the good in every situation. I know this is harder than it sounds, but if you make this a practice, you will become expert at it. Second is to switch off. It's turning off distractions, whether it be unsubscribing from various mailing lists that you no longer need, whether it be a social media detox, getting off of Instagram and Pinterest and YouTube and Facebook and anywhere else that you happen to roam. It's interesting because LinkedIn did a survey recently. If you're not familiar with LinkedIn, they are a professional networking site, and they found that 70% of employees reported they can't switch off from work mode when they're on vacation. How sad is that? You don't get that much vacation time compared to how much you work. So the fact that we're not tuning out our work brain and really enjoying the moment is really unfortunate, right? So switching off is really important. Third is to enjoy your own company. Yes, be solo for a little while. Step away from all the external noise and the overstimulation. For me, as an introvert, this is fairly easy. While I do love being social and I'm quite chatty, I really crave my alone time. So I love curling up in bed with a good book for hours. I'm the kind of person that eats out alone and goes to the movie theaters alone, and it's just a really cathartic and grounding time. I do believe that it also fosters a sense of confidence and self-worth, and research tells us that when you enjoy your own company, it actually reduces your risk of being vulnerable to FOMO. And finally, before we wrap up, I want to share this with you. Gratitude turns everything that we have into enough. I would actually argue you can say more than enough. I feel that in my life, I have more than enough. More than enough love, more than enough health, more than enough friendships, material goods, comforts, experiences, opportunities. I think most of us, if we were to really pause and reflect, we would be overwhelmed with feelings of gratitude. So let's sit in that for a bit and tune out that fear of missing out, that external noise, and really tune into the JOMO, the joy of missing out, because what you're living in the present right now is more precious, more important, and really worthy of your attention. So I hope this video was interesting and helpful in some way. I would love to know the ways that you combat FOMO and what has worked for you. Please comment down below so we can all learn together. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.